Hello Anita, hello my friends. Today I would like to present about principles of instructed language learning by Rod Ellis 2004. We are going to go about the background of the study. Okay, as we could see, there are many research of how second language are required has been created and understanding and contributing to more effective instructed language learning. According to Norris and Ortega's meta-analysis published in 2000, they say there are some studies that have been investigated the effects of instruction on learning. Much of the theorizing about L2 instruction has been specifically undertaken with language pedagogy in mind. For example, monitor model by Carlson 1981, inflection hypothesis by Long 1996, skill learning theory by Van Patten 1996, instructed language learning by Ellis 1994, all address the role of instruction in L2. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is about objective of the study. In the study, the researchers want to create their own professional specifications in the form of principles and to combine together findings from a range of second language acquisition studies in order to formulate a set of general principles for language pedagogy. Everyone has their own perceptions, and they did not expect that all SLA researchers or all language teachers will agree with them. Moreover, they hope and will provide a basis for argument and for reflections. In this study, the researcher only summarize and give opinion about all the researchers' instructions for SLA. Okay, next. In this page, we could see interaction on learning. Okay, there are 10 kinds of learning instructions. 1. Develop both a rich repertoire of formulaic expressions and a rule-based competence. 2. Focus predominantly on meaning. 3. Focus on form. 4. Develop implicit knowledge of DL2 while not neglecting explicit knowledge. 5. Take into account the learner's built-in syllabus. 6. Require extensive input, L2 input. 7. Require opportunities for output. 8. The opportunity to interact in the L2 is central to developing L2 proficiency. 9. Take account of individual differences in learners. And 10. Examine free as well as controlled production. Okay, we are going to the first principle. It is about instruction needs to ensure that learners develop both a rich repertoire of formula expressions and a rule-based competence. Skehan 1998 stated that proficiency in an L2 requires that learners acquire both a rich repertoire of formula expression, which caters to fluency, and a rule-based competence consisting of knowledge of specific grammatical rules, which cater to complexity and accuracy. Ellis 1996 has suggested that learners bootstrap their way to grammar by first internalizing and then analyzing fixed sequence. Classroom studies by Ellis 1984, Miles et al. 1988-1999, and Miles 2004 demonstrate that learners often internalize learned material as chunks breaking them down for analysis later on. Long, 1991, has developed rule-based competence, for example, knowledge of specific grammatical rules, through the systematic teaching of pre-selected structures referred to focus on the form approach. As we could see from Ellis, Miles, and Long are agreed that learners will develop language well by focus on form and internalize rote learned material. Curriculum designers and teachers need to recognize that this type of instruction is as likely to result in students learning rote memorized pattern as in internalizing abstract rules. This is by Miles 2004. Okay, let's go to the principle number 2. Instruction needs to ensure that learners focus predominantly on meaning. It is focused on meaning that is somewhat ambiguous. As we could see on this slide, there are two different senses. One, semantic meaning, and then pragmatic meaning. In semantic meaning, the teacher and the students can treat language as an object and function as pedagogists and learners. And then in pragmatic meaning, L2 as a tool for communicating and to function as communicators. In advocating these principles, the researchers do not wish to suggest that instruction needs to be directed exclusively at providing learners with opportunities to create pragmatic meaning. It could be effective instruction must include such opportunities. Ideally, over an entire curriculum, they should be predominant. Okay, we are going to the principle number 3. It is about instruction needs to ensure that learners also focus on form. This is now a widespread acceptance that acquisition also requires that learners attend to form. Smith, 1994, has example about there is no learning without conscious attention form. Okay, let's go to the next slide. It is about instruction can cater to a focus on form in a number of ways. 1. Through grammar lessons designed to teach specific grammatical features by means of input or output processing. From the Smith, he believed that they should be learned. It should be learned by the students, so they have to be focused to the form of the language. Firstly, the students must have to learn about grammar lesson. It would give a process the input and output. 2. Through focused tasks. After they have learned about language learning, the students have given about the task. It has required them to comprehend and process specific grammatical structures in the input and or to produce the structures in the performance of the task. And 3. By means of methodological options that induce attention to form in the context of performing a task. After they have learned about language learning and the task, the students could practice what they have got from the English teachers through performing tasks. Okay, as we could see on the screen, we are going to principle number 4. Instruction needs to be predominantly directed at developing implicit knowledge of the L2 while not neglecting explicit knowledge. Implicit knowledge that underlies the ability to communicate fluently and confidently in an L2. It is this type of knowledge that should be the ultimate goal of any instructional program. According to the non-interface position by Crescent at 1981, explicit and implicit knowledge are entirely distinct, with the result that explicit knowledge cannot be converted into implicit knowledge. This position is supported by research that suggests that explicit and implicit memories are neurologically separate. This is by Partis, 1994. According to them, they don't believe that explicit learning will be related from the interface position. From the interface position argues that the exact opposite, drawing on skill learning theory by the Crasher, 1998. It argues that explicit knowledge becomes implicit knowledge if learners have the opportunity for plentiful communicative practice. And then, the weak interface position by Ellis, 1993, claims that explicit knowledge primes a number of key acquisitional processes, in particular noticing the gap. Okay, in principle number 5, it is about instruction needs to take into account the learner's built-in syllabus. Early research into naturalistic L2 acquisition showed that learners follow a natural order and sequence of acquisition. For example, they master different grammatical structures in a relatively fixed and universal order, and they pass through a sequence of stages of acquisition en route to mastering each grammatical structure. There are a number of possibilities the instructions to take account of the learner's built-in syllabus. First, adopt a zero-grammar approach as proposed by Krashen. This is a task-based approach that makes no attempt to predetermine the linguistic content of a lesson. 2. Ensure that learners are developmentally ready to acquire a specific target feature. At this point, the teacher has no way of determining student achievement. Therefore, teachers need to take an individual approach to their students to find out the progress that has been successfully achieved by the students. 3. Focus on the instruction on explicit rather than implicit knowledge, as explicit knowledge is not subject to the same developmental constraints as implicit knowledge. From that point, there are some declarative facts that language is easier to reach and master. This can be determined through students' cognitive superiority over their developmental complexity. It can be taken into account easily in deciding the order of instructions on the syllabus. As we know, syllabus with traditional structure is judged based on cognitive complexity. Okay, in principle number 6, it is about successful instructed language learning requires extensive L2 input. Creation 1998 and 1994 has adopted a very strong position on the importance of input. He points to studies that have shown that length of residence in the country where the language is spoken is related to language proficiency, and other studies that have found positive correlation between the amount of reading reported and proficiency or literacy. It means that the environment also has effect to the learners. If they learn L2 with their friends, teachers, and their families outside of the classroom, they will be knowledgeable to practice L2. To ensure adequate access, teachers need to 1. Maximize use the L2 inside the classroom. At this point, it can be seen that L2 students need media and learning objects to make it easier for them to learn English. For example, students are given the task of compiling stories, answering questions, and presenting the results of discussions with their friends. 2. Create opportunities for students to receive input input outside the classroom. This can be shown by giving assignments from teachers, for example, interviews expressing opinions from classmates, their families, and even about the environment they are observing. It can be claimed with confidence that if the only input students receive is in the context of a limited number of weekly lessons based on some course book, they are unlikely to achieve high level of L2 proficiency. Principle number 7. It is about successful instructed language learning also requires opportunities for output. Skehan 1998, drawing a Swain 1995 summarizes the contributions that output can make. 1. Production serves to generate between a better input through the feedback that learners' efforts at production elicit. 2. It forces synthetic processing. For example, obliges learners to pay attention to grammar. 3. It allows learners to test out hypotheses about the target language grammar. It helps to automatize existing knowledge. 5. It provides opportunities for learners to develop discourse skills, for example, by producing learned terms. 6. It is important for helping learners to develop a personal voice by steering conversation on to topics they are interested in, contributing to at least 2003. Adds one other contribution of output. 7. It provides the learner with auto input. For example, learners can attend to the input provided by their own productions. The importance of creating opportunities for output, including what Swain has called pushed output, for example, output where the learner is stretched to express message clearly and explicitly, constitutes one of the main reasons for incorporating tasks into a language program. Principle number 8, it is about the opportunity to interact in the L2 is central to developing L2 proficiency. It is useful to consider the relative contribution of output and input to acquisition. It is also important to acknowledge that both occur in oral interaction and that both computational and sociocultural theories of L2 acquisition have viewed social interaction as the matrix in which acquisition takes place. As we could see in this slide, according to interaction hypothesis from Long 1996, interaction fosters acquisition when a communication problem arises and learners are engaged in negotiating for meaning. Johnson, 1995, identifies 4 key requirements for interaction to create an acquisition-rich classroom. 1. Creating context of language use where students have a reason to attend to language. 2. Providing opportunities for learners to use the language to express their own personal meanings. 3. Helping students to participate in language-related activities that are beyond their current level of proficiency. 4. Offering a full range of contexts that cater for a full performance in the language. Johnson also suggests that These are more likely to occur when the academic task structure, for example, how the subject matter is sequenced in a lesson, and for the social participation structure, for example, how the allocation of instructional rights and obligations shapes the discourse. Principle 9, uh, it is about instruction needs to take account of individual differences in learners. While there are identifiable universal aspects of L2 acquisition, there is also considerable variability in the rate of learning and in the ultimate level of achievements. In particular, learning will be more successful when 1. The instruction is matched to the student's particular aptitude for learning. 2. The students are motivated. However, teachers can cater to variation in the nature of their students' aptitude by adopting a flexible teaching approach involving a variety of learning activities. They can also make use of simple learning training materials designed to make the students more aware of their own approaches to learning and to develop awareness of alternative approaches. Food language learner studies, according to Nyman, 1978, he suggested that successful language learning requires a flexible approach to learning. In this part, teacher has important role to choose the material of activities that gives too appropriate to the students. It also gives the motivation and to make the topic and the activities are related. Teachers also need to accept that it is their responsibility to ensure that their students are motivated and stay motivated and uh, not bewail the fact that the students do not bring any motivation to learn the L2 to the classroom. Okay, in the last, it is about principle 10. In assessing learners' L2 proficiency, it is important to examine free as well as controlled production. Okay, according to Norris and Ortegas 2000, meta-analysis of studies investigating form discussed infraction demonstrated that the extent of the effectiveness of instruction is contingent on the way in which it is measured. Okay, they distinguished four types of measurements. 1. Metalinguistic judgments, for example, a grammatically judgment test. Okay, this text will measure all of the learner's grammar. 2. Selected response, for example, multiple choice. This test provides the learner's answers. Then they should the correct one. They should choose the correct one of the answers. 3. Constraint constructed response. For example, gap filling exercise. The test could develop in reading test, listening test, and the other tests. There are some questions which related with the topic on reading experiences exercises. Okay, 4. Pre-constructed response. For example, communicative task. This test could make the learners more active in speaking English. For example, the teachers ask the learners to present the material, having discussion with their friends, and also telling the story in front of the class. Okay, we are going to the last topic. It is about conclusion. There will always be a need for a psycholinguistics account of how learners internalize new linguistic forms and how they restructure their linguistic knowledge in the process of acquisition. Language use is not language acquisition only means on it. According to the researchers, the computational model provides a solid foundation for developing a set of principles that articulates the relationship between language use and acquisition. It also constitutes a metaphor that teachers can easily relate it. Okay, uh, that's all my presentation. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and God bless you.